You tired of your Lightroom subscription, Adobe subscription in general? I know I am. $240 a year is a hefty price tag. Things are getting expensive, and I'm trying out something new. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Lightroom. I've been using it for 12 plus years. But recently I was watching Gavin over at Photo Tripper Studio edit a photo, and he got me interested in this Luminar Neo. So I'm trying the program out. I'm going to put the two head to head and give you my final thoughts after editing 3 different style images in each program. So without further ado, let's just dive right into it. All these were taken this year. The first one we're looking at here is from the Tetons. Coulter Bay, got the boats with the mountains in the background. One of my favorite photographs. I've edited in Lightroom before, but we're starting from scratch, all raw files, and got some notes. We're gonna do a similar treatment on each photo. Here we go. So first is gonna be our exposure, contrast, basic sliders. And I wanna bring up my shadows a little bit. My contrast. And I want to work on the sky, so I'm going to bring my highlights down. We have a little bit of a color cast here. And the mountains, everything's real blue. So I'm going to take my temp slider up just a hair. Some spot removal. So in Lightroom, I'll come over here to the eraser, visualize spots, play with the slider till I can find most of them, and just start erasing. I'll speed this up for you guys. It took me about 20 seconds and all the spots are gone. So looking at this photo now, I want to take the exposure up a bit more, highlights down some more. I'm just trying to get that sky where I like it. In fact, let's do a mask, select sky, give it a few seconds here, and we'll drop the exposure on that a little bit. We're getting pretty close here. It's time for our custom vignette. Do a radial gradient. Drop it nice and big on my subject. Take the feather down some. Then I'm going to come over here, duplicate and invert. I'm going to take the outer circle that I inverted, drop it down some, take the inner circle and lift it up a little bit. And that there is about where I like my photo. So we have before and after in Lightroom. Not bad at all. I rather like that image. Let's hop on over to the next one. So same thing, we want to do a little exposure. Let's lift our whites some. Drop our blacks, just getting some separation here. And I want to make the flower pop some, bring the texture up a little bit. I'll get rid of this spot on the flower. Don't need my visualized spots for that, but it kind of helped anyways. And then I want to separate this flower out. So let's do, I really like the object detect in Lightroom. Takes just a second. And there we go. It did a very good selection. So I want to lift my shadows in that some. Take my highlights up. Make the flower pop a little bit. And let's duplicate and invert that mask. And back there, I want to take the exposure down just a hair. And the highlights down quite a bit. While we're here in masking, we're going to drop a linear gradient on the bottom. Darken it down just to draw your eye into the photo. And then we're going to tweak our colors just a hair. So I'm going to come over here to hue. I want to make the orange a little more orange. And the green just a little blue. Then come to saturation. I'm going to drop the saturation in that green to something about like that. And in luminance, I'm going to lift my orange and my yellow on the flower just a bit. And there we go, before and after. I like that edit as well. It's really fast for me because I've been using Lightroom for so long. So I know what I want to do and I can just hop in there and get it done. Now we have a wildlife photo. And I want to fix the sky and make the horse pop. So we're going to start by dropping our highlights all the way down. Let's add some contrast. Let's select a sky mask. And drop the exposure in the sky. Take the highlights down just a little more, playing back and forth with the exposure and highlights. It's looking pretty good. Add a little more contrast. Let's do another mask of the horse. I'm going to do object again. You can do subject detection, but I find this object works better most of the time. We'll give it a shot here. And that did a perfect job. So I'll lift the exposure on the horse just a little bit. Take his saturation up a hair. Lift the texture some. Just kind of making this guy pop here. And then a custom vignette again. So our radial gradient. Nice and big over the horse. Duplicate and invert mask. So this one we're going to drop down a hair and the horse up just a tiny amount. I think we will darken the outer circle a little more. Just kind of taking a look at the image here. I feel like it could use a little more contrast. That's going to darken it down some, so we'll lift our exposure just a little bit. And there we go. That looks pretty good. I am happy with that. So we're going to hop over into Luminar Neo and give it the same treatment. Can't run it all. Oh, wait. Forgot one thing. Got a couple flies in here I want to get rid of. All right, now I'll export these images so we can compare them in DaVinci, hop over into Luminar Neo, and give them the same treatment. Here we are in Luminar Neo. We're going to give the images the same type of treatment, but the tools are a little different. I've been playing with them for a few days, and we're going to try and get a similar look and then compare the two. So here we have an Enhance tool. Accent is basically your shadows, and then you got a sky enhancer as well. So I'm going to lift our accent, lift our sky enhancer. It's darkening down that sky. Then I'm going to hop down here to our develop, lift our exposure a little bit and our smart contrast as well. And that is looking pretty good. So we want to get rid of those dust spots. We do have a tool that is the remove dust spots. You click that, you let the AI do its thing. And I've used it on some other images where it did pretty well, but in this one, it did not. The problem is we don't have that dust spot removal highlight tool, but we can zoom in, use the erase, and get them that way. And pretty close to about the same amount of time. Took me about 20 seconds to get rid of those. All right. So for color cast, we have a different tool here. We can open the color tool here and just remove color cast with the slider. It actually works pretty well. So I believe all we have left is our vignette. And in this program, we can do develop masking radial gradient and draw it on there. Make it out, but as far as I can tell, there is no feather. So we're not going to do that. We are going to do something different. We're going to use the vignette tool, and this has a choose subject. So we'll put it on our subject matter, create the vignette. If you see, if we move that subject around, it moves the vignette. Then we have advanced settings. We can change the roundness of it. We can change the feather, but I love this inner light because if you saw in Lightroom, I kept doing two different masks, one for the inner light, one for the outer. Now we can boost that right here. So that's with the vignette on and off, and I really like that as well. We will call this picture done. And then when we finish all of them, hop over into DaVinci, put them side by side and see what we think. All right, now we'll hop over here to our sunflower image. Start with develop, lift our exposure, lift our contrast, drop our shadows down some, and we're going to drop our highlights here and work on the flower individually, because something I have noticed is the subject detection tool doesn't work quite as well. So we're going to go masking, color, and that is looking pretty good. Take our adjustments, lift our exposure a little bit, lift our highlights some, and if we come down here to structure, we have to mask it again, color, pick a middle yellow, increase the range on that. And this is like a texture clarity slider, so we'll make it pop that way. Come to develop again, masking, radial gradient, and put it here in the middle, adjustments, lift the exposure some. So something about Luminar, up here you have a tool tab and an edit tab. If you go to edit, you can see all the changes you've made. You can go back and tweak them. It's non-destructive, everything's there. Really nice feature. So if we hit develop, it's going to make another one of those edit tools. And the program just froze up. It does this every once in a while. So that is one thing to consider. It is a little buggier. I haven't noticed it that bad, but every once in a while it does freeze up. So for professionability, I have to give a slight edge to Lightroom there. And it is completely busted. I had to go in, Control-Alt-Delete in the program, and now I'm going to restart it. It looks like all my changes are still there. So here we go, hit the Develop tab. Masking, linear gradient, drop it from the bottom. Adjustments, darken it down. We have to erase that spot. And now we want to tweak our colors. So come down here to HSL, hue, let's make our orange a little more orangey, and our green a little more on the blue side. Saturation, drop the saturation in that green. Luminance, lift our orange some, lift our yellow. Looking at this image, I do want to just do an overall color adjustment and take a little bit of the saturation out of the whole thing. So it looks like I overdid it a little bit. And there we go. Our flower image is done. We got one more, and that's our horse. So we're going to do the same thing as before and try and make the horse pop and fix the sky. So we will start with our enhance, lift our accent, lift our sky, and that is looking really good. We'll come to develop, smart contrast, lift our exposure just a hair. Now we can come back over here to the edits, go to that enhance, do our sky a little more. And I really like that. Let's erase those little flies before I forget. Takes it a minute. And now we want to make our horse pop. So let's try and mask them out. We will start with the mask AI, which is supposed to detect everything in the scene. I've had no luck with critters, but we'll give it another shot. We got sky, which you can see it doesn't do quite as good of a job as Lightroom. Flora, I don't know quite what it did there. Natural ground, not good. Didn't detect the horse at all. So let's go back and we will do object select. The thing I don't like is you can't paint your object in. It's just going to run AI, and now you can go through and add it. But if you see, if I add the horse, it's grabbing some sky, it's grabbing some bush. It's not nearly as good of a selection as Lightroom did, so there is that. Let's go back and lift his color a little bit, lift his saturation, and now if we want to do the detail, structure, we have to mask him out again. Add our horse, adjustments, give him a little more detail. So this just leaves us with our custom vignette. We're going to choose the subject, take the amount where we want it, advanced settings, take the feather some, and do a little inner light. And there we go, that's our horse. All right, we're gonna hop over into DaVinci after we export these 3 photos, put them all side by side, and see what looks the best in our opinion, and then I'll give you my final thoughts on using both programs. All right, we got 1 frame of each in our timeline here. Let's hop in and take a look. The first image will be Lightroom and the second one will be Luminar Neo. We'll hit Control F to hop in the full screen here. And here's the Lightroom edit of our Teton shot. Looks pretty nice. I'm happy with that. And that is the Luminar. And I like it more. Let's go back and forth here. It just has a lot more pop and contrast. I like what that color cast slider did versus just warming the photo up a hair. Just feels like it has more punch to me. So for the quick simple edits I did, I really rather like the way that this Neo looked. I would call that a done photograph and be happy to print it or share it. Kind of surprised there. I thought Lightroom would kick its butt, but those tools did a rather good job. Let's hop on over to the next photo, see what we think. So here's our Lightroom edit of the sunflower. Once again, I'm happy. I like the way that looks. Let's hop to the next frame and see what Neo did. Back on Lightroom. Back on Neo. Lightroom. Neo. See a little bit of a halo here from the way I selected the center of that flower. But I'm not really finding it a bad thing. And the petals actually look a little more natural. Let's go back with a little more detail. I want to give a slight edge to Neo. I think the flower in that edit looks a little more realistic. and a little more pleasing, but I'd be happy with both of those. I mean, slight edge to Neo. It was easier to edit in Lightroom with the object select, but Neo made a very pleasing photograph, and that's what it's all about in the end. Let's move on over to our horse. So here's our Lightroom edit, and it came out pretty good. I'm not exactly thrilled with it. It was very kind of flat that day, but it's a nice photograph. Let's see what Neo did. And that is a lot better. One thing I'm noticing right off the back, if you look around the horse here, go back to Lightroom, you can see a slight halo. And one thing I just noticed moving back and forth as well, it looks like the lens profile corrections on Neo did a little better. The horse looks a little less distorted, which I'm surprised because I heard in earlier versions of Luminar that the profile corrections weren't that good. But that looks really good to me, and I really like the sky. This is Lightroom, this is Neo, and the contrast just looks a lot more edgy and more realistic. So out of 3 photographs, I prefer the look of 2 of them definitely in Luminar Neo. One of them is kind of a tie, slight edge to Luminar Neo. So what's that mean? Well, I like Lightroom. I like the cataloging. Even though I'm really bad at it, I don't do it that often. I like the option that it's there, being able to find your pictures by the camera they were shot on and stuff like that. Things I can't find in Neo. And I like the Lightroom never crashes on me. Not on this computer. It's kind of a beast. And Neo's crashed on me, I'd say, 2 out of the 10 times I've used it. So it's a little buggy. But in the end, if it comes down to what the image looks like and getting rid of that Lightroom subscription, I'm really happy with this program. I'm going to have to play with it some more, but right now I'm really leaning towards just cutting Adobe Lightroom out and running with this Luminar Neo editor. It's because I really like the way these images look. I'm really tired of the subscription. $240 a year. I mean, times 12 years, I've spent, close to $1,500–1,600 just in Lightroom. If Lightroom did have a Lightroom license, I would be happy to pay $300 for it and use it. That's what I did with DaVinci. I dumped Adobe Premiere for DaVinci, paid the $300 for the studio version, and I couldn't be happier. This Luminar Neo, it cost me about $130, and they say that was marked down from $500 and something, but from what I see, everybody's getting it for around $130 for that lifetime, or you can pay by the month. I found that kind of gimmicky. It had a little countdown, 6 days till this offer expires to get it for $130, but I did it and I'm pretty happy with it. Just felt a little gimmicky the way they sold it to me. So that's it. That's my comparison for stability. And honestly, for me, Lightroom's faster. Everybody talks about how fast this is to edit with, but I've been using it for 12 years. I know the tools in and out. I could do this a little faster in Lightroom, but the final image quality to me is looking a little better in Luminar, and I would be happy to ditch that subscription. I'll probably keep it for a few more months, do a few more comparison tests back and forth, but those are my initial thoughts. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Until next time.